Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good evening.
Hello, everyone.
This is the second part of growth mindset because there was such huge interest from your side that
I
we
mean, yeah, last
added.
time everybody was asking all these questions. We couldn't get a word in because we were just asking. This is a hot topic. So I'm glad that we can do part two and keep
Absolutely.
answering.
If you will be so kind, because we are broadcasting as always on LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you can, put in the comment line that you see us and you hear us, that would be very good. I will check also on my phone whether, LinkedIn is working. It looks like probably yes. I go to my channel. Yeah, it goes now. It's taking some time actually before StreamYard is notifying LinkedIn. Now it's working. So okay, we have
Well, that's perfect. And for
new
anyone who's,
choice.
yeah, I was going to say, we've always got our number one fan here live on YouTube. You
Yes.
may be interested in my fingernails today. They're quite long. Um, but I
And
know,
it looks like we have almost like 20 people already on LinkedIn because we see here on StreamYard for some reason, we see only people from YouTube, which is Mika, you know.
I'm sure they'll get there even if they're delayed. Everybody, please feel
Perfect.
free to send in your questions and they'll join.
Perfect. Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, I have a also nice hairstyle.
The two of us
Very,
are looking
very
very
short. I was a hairdresser today. So do you want to kick it off, Lisa?
I do, and actually today is we had scheduled this well in advance, but this is a very important topic for my heart today. If you can see, for anyone who follows the show regularly, whenever I have this blue background, it's because I'm in New York visiting my parents. And I did have to fly back over the weekend quite suddenly. My mom had some health issues. She was in the intensive care unit at the hospital. We didn't know what was going to happen, what that was going to look like. And of course, it would have been very easy for me to say, I want to be with the family. We're going to cancel for today. But it felt so important to share with people when you're in the midst of bad things happening and it's out of your control, right? And of course, whenever you have somebody you love who is sick or something, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're feeling helpless, you have all these negative, fearful, scary, hard emotions. Even during the hardest parts, that is the time to still call on a growth mindset. Still, instead of letting emotions overtake what's bad, what's wrong, what's really still be thinking, what in this moment is important? Where can I move forward? What can I learn? What can I do? Right? So I thought rather than hiding, I wanted to show you that growth mindset is not about when things are going well, how do you continue to do well? That's not really growth mindset. That's riding the high. Growth mindset is really about no matter what circumstances you're facing, you still see opportunity in the hardest of situations. And that's what today's all about.
No, absolutely. I think and obviously, fingers crossed for your mom and our, hearts and minds are with your, family. And yeah, I think you said one important thing because whatever is happening in your life, you need to accept what is happening. Then you can, help here, whatever, is necessary to do. But you should not be, because you can have a mindset of acceptance, you accept and then you do something, or the mindset of denial, which is the fixed mindset. You try to deny why it's happened, whatever. It happened. That's life, and you
Yeah.
need to face it, and you need to figure out how you can help and what you should do. And this is exactly I was listening actually over the weekend some interview from Novak Djokovic, and he said that once he realized that it's much better to be man of acceptance as opposed to the man of denial. He improved his game significantly, right? And that's the difference between fixed mindset, because fixed mindset works if the things are going very well, as you said, Lisa, right? Fixed mindset are going, it's going very well. If it's going very well, you are fine. Well, once there are some issues, there are some roadblocks, the people with fixed mindset, they have a tendency to give up and basically deny, right? And then you suffer once, it's happening, and every time you remember about that situation. Okay. I give you one example what happened to me over the weekend. I was the whole week in Milan when there was a Masters Next Generation, because my tennis player Jiri Lehecka, he qualified there, right? In the last year or the year before, Alcaraz, won it. Really, he's number one now. So it's a top, tournament for the players up to the 21 years old. And Jiri, played very well, and he qualified to the final. Okay, he lost in the final. It was a good match, but when he was in semi-final, there was after, and he won. Over striker from Switzerland. He is a very good player, and he won his group. He beaten everybody. That guy, and he easily won over him in semi-final. Okay, and the journalist from Eurosport, because there was a Eurosport all the time, so people were like sending me, Jan, you are in the TV all the time. And they asked me, what did you tell him after the third, set? Because he was like winning 2-1. It was on the best of three out of the five sets, obviously. And I said, nothing special. Because it was seen that I was, like coaching him, right, over the mountain now. And I told him two things basically. You are in the mind of the other player, and you need to keep that in that way, because I tell you what, if the other player thinks about about the opponent, that means that you are not concentrating on yourself and on your game. You are concentrated on the other guy game, and that's fixed mindset, right? You can move that guy if you are smart, and he played very well, but it was clear that the striker was really nervous, like what he was doing. So I said, you need to stay in his mind, right, as an opponent, right? Because the growth mindset is like, hey, whatever is happening, you should concentrate on your performance. That's the growth mindset. Once you start to think, hey, he's really doing, very good job, whatever. I mean, you cannot influence the other player, right? You can influence only your performance. That was one thing, and the other thing was, you need to go one ball after the other, one present moment after the other. That's why the growth mindset is so important, because growth mindset is enabling you to forget about the past. Whatever happened in the past, you need to move on to the new situation, take in account what happened in the past, but be concentrated on the ball you are, playing. And he basically, he won. And I think this is it. And it's the same. I give you another example of the growth mindset and the fixed mindset from business. Okay. I think majority of the time, my company, Microsoft, we've got a growth mindset in the history. Okay. But there was a time when we have a fixed mindset, and that was when, we were developing mobile phones. Microsoft engineers were watching all the times what the Apple engineers were doing, right? All the time we were like watching what the Apple engineers were doing. Apple engineers, they concentrated on their own, phone, and they build the best phone in the world, This is it, right? It's good to know what your competitors are doing, but you should not be overwhelmed by them, basically, because that's the fixed mindset, because you concentrate too much on the result and too little on your own performance.
Yeah. And Jan, I love what you're saying here. After our last session, some folks asked, how do you notice when you're in this fixed mindset? Because sometimes it's such a normal mindset for people, they don't even notice, so they can't even be aware to switch to a growth mindset, right? And I like to say, whenever you're feeling stuck, whenever you're feeling sorry for yourself, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Whenever you're feeling like nothing can be done here, or I need to look at what other people are doing and comparing myself, which is what you just said, comparison is helpful if you are looking at the other person to say, I see how they're doing it, and that motivates me to learn how to do it, or it motivates me how to get better, or it gives me an inspiration, because you learn and internalize from what they're doing. But if you say, they're so much better than I am, I'm not good enough, I have to, none of that is going to be helpful. right? Growth mindset is always that forward looking. What can I learn? You look to the past to learn, but not to judge, not to have blame or shame about it. Just to go, okay, what can I learn from this situation that makes it so that in the, future at my next ball, how am I going to show up even better? Right?
Exactly. You said one important thing, not judge, okay? Because once you start to judge your performance during your performance, right? Well, it's contradictory because then it means if you start to judge yourself, you go to the past or maybe to the future, but you are losing your present moment. This is it, right? So it's good once the like the performance, whether it's match or maybe fiscal months or whatever, if you are doing business, is done, then you can obviously judge, get a feedback and stuff like that. This is absolutely fine. The other thing which Lisa said, and I will be complimentary to her, if you are absolutely dependent on your results. Look, I was coaching one singer, right? Not on a regular basis. We still meet from time to time. And that
Oh,
singer, she was absolutely dependent on like applause after the concert, whatever. She said, I have so high, but once I'm going home, I'm absolutely down. Okay. And this is it. If you have a fixed mindset, your dopamine goes up, but then immediately down. It goes like that, right? And you are dependent on dopamine, but once it's not going well, your baseline is going down. And I asked her, do you like, applause of those people, or do you like your singing? Do you have like emotional connection to the applause, or your, singing, right? And I said, you can still think in the way, I love my singing so much. That's why people will clap their hands, afterwards, right? This is it. And that's the difference between growth mindset and the fixed mindset, I think, because if you love the process, there are no peaks of the dopamine, but dopamine goes like step by step, up. But you are not dependent. You are like, hey, I love singing, and there will be new concert, there will be new match, there will be new fiscal year if you do the business, right? And this is it. But unfortunately, society, because we are so much short-term oriented, society, I think there's a lot of companies still with the fixed mindset, right? If you think about how companies, how performance is measured on stock exchange, it's measured on, like the whole thing is around the year. We have a spring, we have a summer, we have autumn, and then we have a fall in the US, and we have a winter. Okay. And in the business it's like quarterly earnings, right? And it's like pushing everything, and it's very unnatural, and I think it's about fixed mindset. It's too much. We too much concentrate on short term results. Everybody talks about sustainability in nature and in the business and so on, but it is not sustainable, right? Because I can imagine that we can easily measure companies on 1 year basis simply. Yeah. Everybody talks about long-term investment. You are there with 5, 10 years, 15 years horizons with investment, but we measure it on the quarterly basis.
exactly. And this is the thing to think about, which is really at odds. For a really good growth mindset, yes, there are some automatic habits you can do, especially if you're trained as an athlete. I have to look at the next ball. I have to do this. But actually, what's very important for developing the growth mindset, because growth mindset is all about learning, opportunity, seeing forward, is that you need to slow down and have a time to reflect. An active time where you go back, reflect what happened, what could be different, what could be better. Now, most of the people that I work with in the business world, they're like, okay, but I'm working 14 hours a day. It's like, go, 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 go. I have to do strategy here. I have this here. I have to think about this. I'm in meetings 8 hours a day, this and this. I don't have time to reflect. I literally had someone tell me that yesterday. Like, I just booked a coaching session. I don't even know what I want to coach on. I just needed to have an hour to like think, to breathe, to like, I don't even know what I need to reflect on yet. That was the first question to ask, right? And if you don't build in time for reflection and the slowing down and the learning, you can't have a growth mindset. We know Bill Gates reads how many books, a month. We know Warren Buffett, all the brilliant geniuses that you see, the people who really are cutting edge, the top of the top on growth mindset, every athlete, because you take the time to sit, reflect, consolidate, learn. Don't let the monkey brain take over. That's a hugely important part of developing your growth mindset, is just giving yourself enough time to be able to grow and make sense of everything that's happening to you.
Yeah, there is a paper from 2010. It's called Wandering Mind is Unhappy Mind, right? Because if
Hmm.
you have a growth mindset, the chances are that you have a huge emotional connection to what you do, right? You are kind of in the present moment, and you like, the way, you like the journey, you like your, performance. Okay. So, and on in this paper, they are basically saying that our mind is wandering up to the 60% of the time, and more your mind is wandering, you are kind of the unhappy, because it is, I assume it's because your brain likes very much, like clarity, because the brain is like, survival machine, and then you predict basically based on what you learn in the past, right? So your brain likes to spend as less as energy as possible, and if your mind is wandering, it costs you a lot of energy. Okay, so that's why they are saying that, wandering mind is less happy mind. And there is another important outcome of this study. They basically figure out that, what you think about is much better prediction of your happiness as opposed to what you do. You can do some activity you like, but if your mind is going, around, and you are not concentrated, you are still unhappy, right? That this is why I think mindset is, key. But unfortunately, in the schools and even in the workplaces, people are really not taking care of that. This is, if you will look at, it was like 2 weeks ago, Andy Huberman did a piece on YouTube on meditation, and he talks about that because, meditation is actually the great way how to put your mind in the present moment, right? and
Mm-hmm.
and be that mind less wandering. Obviously, if, like, there are situations, if you want to be creative, it's sometimes good that your mind is, wandering, but it's good to stimulate your mind. Maybe you go to the nature, right? It depends what is inspiring you. But this is it, right? And if people are really like fully engaged, that's because they have a, growth mindset. They like what they do, and the growth mindset is enabling you to be in the present moment as much as possible. And that's why people with the growth mindset are able long term to get, optimal performance much more often, as opposed to the people with the fixed mindset.
Yes. And Jan, I love what you were saying earlier. We actually stepped away, but I actually want to bring it back, because at the very
Yes.
beginning, you talked about acceptance.
Hmm.
And people often say, when I talk about this with people, they're like, "Oh, but I don't want to accept it. It means I'm going to be complacent, or I'm just going to like let whatever happens happens, right? But I want to be in the driver's seat. I want to be in control." And acceptance doesn't mean, okay, whatever happens happens. You don't have to be passive about acceptance. You're just not in denial. You accept the situation for what it is, and then you move forward with it. And I think this is a huge part of growth mindset, is so many people, to protect their ego or how they're feeling, they do not go into acceptance. They go into denial. So instead of saying like, "Oh, I just gave a presentation and that was a pretty crappy presentation," right? Because that hurts, right? You don't want to say you did a bad job. So you might be like, "Oh, well, I hadn't slept that day and I wasn't prepared because of this, and there's all these reasons," right? We don't need a reason. We just accept the presentation didn't go as I had hoped.
So
It's not a judgment, and didn't say bad. I didn't say I'm stupid, right? We just accept reality for what it is. The presentation didn't go as I had hoped. And once you can accept that, not make excuses for it, not deny it, not run away from it because it feels uncomfortable, you see what it is, We lost the game. My mom is sick, right? Whatever it is, you don't have to like it. It just is. And then you say, okay, so where do I want to go from here? Right? How do I close the gap on whatever's making me upset, what I wish were different? And how do I close that gap? And you immediately go from I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling like a victim, I'm feeling stupid, I'm feeling not good enough, whatever it was that was the sort of reel in your mind, you can cut that. Don't waste any more energy on that and just say, what is? Great. And what's the goal? Where do I want to move forward to? How do I get there? How do I plan for that? And I think if everybody could just practice that, you'd already be 80% to growth mindset. Accept what is, figure out the goal of what you want to improve or learn or do better or differently, and just take one small step. You don't have to change your whole life. One small step, and every small step along the way with continuous improvement, you all of a sudden, after 3 months, 6 months, a year, see a huge difference.
Yeah, because it works in the following way. If you accept it, you can, return to the present moment and do something with what happened, right? Improve it. Maybe there was something good, so you may repeat it, performance, whatever. If you deny it, that means that your mind will sit in the past, and your mind will probably say, because I didn't, do it in the past, I may not do it in the future, which is, stupid. It doesn't go like that. Otherwise, we would live somehow in the caves, right? Because there'll be no improvement, right? That's that this is really important. And like, and even if you take Buddha 2500 years ago, he was saying that all suffering is coming from attachment, that we are attached to the situation, to the people, and so on. But we need to move on and accept what happened, because you cannot, unless we change causality, it will, right. It's about the physics. It will not happen, so you need to accept what happened and move on. And you may use what I call, the method of, like, remind yourself what was going well that day or in that activity, repair what was not going very well, and imagine how you will do it in the future. Because if you think our mind is fantastic, our mind can remember, what was going in the past, can be aware of the present moment, and can imagine the future. Okay. And think about that. If you are stuck with the past, hey, this is what happened in the past. The best thing you can do with the past to learn, like in the what was positive, what was negative, what should you change, right? But then you may have some vision. Then you can imagine, hey, and this is what I should do in the future. But future is happening now, because future is one present moment after the other. Future is not in the future, right? And this is why, and this is it. Growth mindset is like one present moment after the other, and our ability to be in the present moment. If my friend, who is one of the best, cardio surgeons in the world, Jan Perk, would, operate like what the some soccer players are, playing, a lot of people would die. Really, he needs to be for 8 hours, one present moment after the other, and he need to perform well whatever is happening, whether it's going with no complication or there's a complication. His performance needs to be really, top, top, top. Okay.
Yes.
I know that I'm comparing like football and sport, and the surgery, but still, this is it. His mind needs to be the mind of acceptance. He needs to accept complication during the surgery. If he would be in mindset of denial, that person would probably die. I know that I'm using some tough examples, but this is it.
But that's exactly right. And this is why oftentimes if I'm doing like a big training, we say all these tips about growth mindset and everybody goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, makes sense. I'm going to walk out of here and I'm going to have a growth mindset and it's going to be perfect." And then the reality is when you do in one-to-one coaching on growth mindset, there's one thing that stops most people from having a growth mindset truly, and it's their fear.
Yeah.
right? And it is, I'm not good enough. I have this denial. I don't want to accept the situation what it is. It's hard. It's not what I had hoped for. It's not what I had expected. And so I often say, hey, for those of you who are listening and are looking for some extra tips, one of the best things that you can do is just work with your fear, right?
Yeah.
Instead of running from fear or trying to pretend we don't have fear, which we do, we're all humans, we work with the fear. So, one of the greatest things that I can say as a tool is called fear. I think it's fear planning, but you can look it
Mhm.
up. It's Tim Ferriss, right?
Yeah,
And what
that's
he
great.
said,
3 columns. Yeah.
exactly. So he has a TED talk about it, and he has a whole blog post about it. And basically, the first thing you do is you name your fears. When your fears are like spinning in your head, this is for all people. It can feel overwhelming. We feel anxious. We feel like, oh my God, this is a big deal. Sometimes just the act of really putting pen to paper or words in your mouth and
Right.
saying what the fear is, you look it in the face and you go, oh my God, that's stupid. Or like, that's so unlikely to happen, right? So sometimes even just labeling the fear is enough, but we label the fear in the first column. And then we talk about in the second column, okay, so if I know this is a fear of mine, what can I do to prevent this from happening? So if I'm giving a large speech and I'm afraid I won't know how to answer the questions, what can I do to prevent that? Okay, first I can try to make a list of the questions I think people might ask and already prepare some answers. I could talk to a couple of people, give the speech ahead of time, see what questions they have, make sense. So there's a lot of stuff I can do to prevent the fear from happening. And then you also make a plan. We can't, like, wish we could, we can't prevent everything bad from happening to us in life, right? So if you can prevent it, super. If you can't, how do you repair it? So what would you do if it does go badly? And you already think through the scenario. So someone asks a question, I don't know the answer. Maybe it's appropriate for me to say, hey, I'm a great question. I'm going to get back to you. Let me, have my team research it and let me come back to you tomorrow. So I already have an idea of if this thing goes way wrong, I already know how to handle it. It all of a sudden makes fear less intimidating. So many times people have a growth mindset already in areas that they're good at. They feel confident in it. They know enough about it that they don't feel they're going to look foolish. So I can learn more here. Where people as adults, because we lose our ability, we feel embarrassed or stupid, where we really let fear take over and we most keep our fixed mindset is areas where we're like, ooh, but I'm not the expert there. Oh, I wanted to change career paths, but I didn't study that originally, right? Oh, I want to quit my corporate job and run my own business, but I don't know if I'm going to know how to run my own business. And so that's when we let fear stop us. We have that fixed mindset that, I can't run my own business, or running your own business is for someone who has this skill set or has an MBA, whatever it is a fixed mindset. So we want to say where you're good, keep your growth mindset. Where you actually really care about something but have some fear, there are tools out there to help you get past your fear. If you can get past your fear, that's when you can truly see the exponential results of having a growth mindset, because my God, you will be doing something amazing if you're not afraid to try.
This exercise from Tim Ferriss really, divides emotional thinking from logical thinking,
Yes.
because there is a first column. It's like give your, amygdala microphone, the small monkey in your brain, and you go all fears. Then there is a, prevention column. That's your professor, logical part of the brain, and correction column, right? If it's happening, what you will do, which is great, because the thing is, if even if you only think about possible, fears or whatever, and you think about that, that fear will lower, because your monkey reacts, amygdala reacts, if it's totally, new and unknown. If it's if at least you touch it, you gave, your professor some sense about the fear, the chances are that you will manage that fear very well. It's normal to be fearful. If you are like tennis player, football player, manager, or singer, it is okay to have some fears, but you need to face the fear and return back to the present moment, right? So this is, you need to name, hey, I'm fearful, this is it, right? And And if you wanted to identify the fear, you need to basically observe the fear. So you should not. It's wording, but it's a huge thing. Every word and the way you use it creates chemistry in your brain, and those chemicals are hormones, and they have huge influence on your performance, whether it's mental or physical performance, right? So what you should say, I observe my fear, which means your professor is observing your amygdala, your monkey. If you will say I'm fearful, now means, hey, professor is saying amygdala, you should do something with the fear, right? You should create some stress reaction, which is fight, flee, or freeze, right? So this is it. But it is normal. I mean, there is nobody who is like fearless. That does not exist.
No, your brain doesn't work if you're not, if you don't
Because you would not have your amygdala, you would not survive basically if you are fearless, right? That you would jump from some, I don't know, skybrighter, whatever.
Yes. And this is very interesting, and I don't know the answer to this, so maybe you can help me think it through live, or someone who's here.
Hmm.
I was recently talking to a coach the other week, and I said, I don't have any trouble taking emotional risks, taking business risks. Like for me, that comes really easy, growth mindset, go, go, go. But I have trouble with physical risks. So you'll never find me like bungee jumping. I'm scared of skiing downhill, like just physical risks I have a fear of. And what this coach said to me is, so you have a difference between fear around vulnerability and true fear. Vulnerability you feel safe with, and fear you still don't feel so safe with. And I thought that was an interesting distinction, because it's usually actually the opposite for most people, right? Most people are like, cool, I'll go, drive a race car around, no problem. But then if you have to, oh my God, admit you made a mistake in front of your team, no way. So there's also a lot to growth mindset where it's about vulnerability. It's about letting yourself be seen as, I'm a work in progress, because guess what? We all are.
Yeah,
Some people don't want to, look that way, but we all are. So a vulnerability to say, look, I'm learning. I don't, I know some stuff and I don't know some stuff, because we all don't know everything, right? It's impossible. And that ability to let yourself be free and comfortable and okay with saying, I don't know, happy to figure it out. I don't know yet, right? That is what we're seeking when we're really looking for
yeah,
growth mindset in the workplace.
yeah. And I think, Lisa, the example you use, like mental, versus physical,
Yeah.
it has to do with our genes, because everybody is unique, right? Because our genes are unique. There are no two people, unless we will start to clone people, obviously. Hopefully not. you know uh, because your genes are unique, your talents are unique, okay? And then it depends what is giving you energy. For example, bungee jumping, I think at some point I would be able to do it, but I'm not really attracted by that. I'm attracted a lot by, like, physical work. If I work with some heavy metal stuff like that, running. I'm very good with all ball games. I'm not very good in gymnastics, and I hate it basically when I was in the school. Right? So it really depends, right? What is giving you like adrenaline, kind of the right? But I think it doesn't matter. I think what is important for the growth mindset, to be out of your comfort zone as much as you can, because all like new knowledge, new skills, and everything is happening out of your comfort zone, even though your brain doesn't like it, obviously. That's the trick, because your brain is saying all is fine, everything is fine, right? What I see now, and because Yeri, Lahed's got a tennis player, he's really good, but we want to move him. He's like 70 or whatever. We want to move him to top 10, obviously, right? And if you are top 10, it's a different way how you work. So now we will sit together with tennis coach, physical coach, and me, and we will figure the gap between Iri and those best, like Alcaraz, whatever. And what I realized, for example, that Alcaraz, he likes to attack comfort zone as much as possible, like Rafael Nadal. The same thing. Rafael Nadal, is not super talented for the tennis. If I compare in Federer, he's a great player, don't take me wrong, okay, but he was not super talented because it works like following way. Skill, whether it's mental skill or physical skill, equals your talent multiplied by effort, like how you train, how you study, if it's mental skill and so on, right? So you need to have this mind. But I think what is important to learn, because if you are learning, you are out of the comfort zone. Even if you are like elderly, it's good to still make your mind work really, in a proper way, because neuroplasticity works till the end of our life. So new connections are created every day.
Yes. And Jan, I love when athletes are asked, are you nervous before a game, right? Are you nervous to compete? Are you nervous at the Olympics? And they say, no, I'm excited.
It's bullshit bingo.
But this is what I think
Everybody
you
is nervous.
everybody's nervous, of course, and you go, okay, how can I take that energy and refocus it somewhere? And that's what the exact same thing I want people to feel when you're going outside of your comfort zone, when you go, oh my god, I'm nervous. Actually, I'm really excited because I'm about to go learn something. And what I tell people is your comfort zone, where you feel the most alive, where you feel the most comfortable, should be in the thrill of the moment of learning something new. If you learn to say, I feel comfortable with learning, right? Then you will continuously attack your comfort zone. You'll feel good there. But when you say, oh, but this is my comfort zone and this is where I feel safe, and you try to hold it in, no, just the opposite. The learning can be your comfort zone. Then you're always seeking the learning. So it's just a little bit of a mindset shift. Same with, I'm not nervous about learning, I'm excited about learning, right?
Absolutely. I tell you why. If people are saying before the performance, it can be, performance in, music, sport, business, whatever. If they are saying, I'm absolutely like cool down, I'm not nervous, why? It's bullshit bingo. Or they will not perform very well. Here is the explanation, okay? What do we know about our brain? Here is a performance, and here is adrenaline, nervosity, okay? So you need to have, optimal level of the adrenaline to reach this top performance. It's like flow. Here is flow, okay, optimal performance. So if you are absolutely like this, no adrenaline, it's hard to get energy. Adrenaline is like pumping you. If it's too much, if it's over, that's not good. You are over motivated, and your performance goes down. So this is it, right? So it's good to be nervous. I mean, I give you what should be the level. Like, hey, I'm nervous, but I'm looking forward to compete. I'm looking forward to present. You know what I mean, right? Like
Yes.
you have this, shivering here, but you are like, hey, we will start very soon. We will go there. That's important. And this is why I think if people are saying, hey, I'm not nervous at all, they will not perform very well, or they are cheating.
Yeah. Exactly. I like the adrenaline hit before I'm performing on a stage
Absolutely.
or something, right? It's
Absolutely.
That's the fun part. A-
Absolutely.
And I do want to offer, by the way, as Jan and I are talking, but we do have 20 minutes. If you have real live
Question. Yeah.
questions, just put them in the chat box. We'll be happy to answer. I have one more important point that I was like, oh my gosh, if we don't talk about this, we miss the opportunity. Because a growth mindset is really at the heart of it, is all about curiosity. This is what we've talked about quite some time. Jan always talks about it when he's working with kids. Young kids are so curious naturally. Why? Believe me, my kids are still asking why. But we lose that as adults, or we look for things like we look for learning opportunities, but because we have an end in mind. So I'm not going to learn French because I think it's a beautiful language and it's fun and interesting. I'm going to learn French because I need it for my job, or I need it to
A
speak to a
tool
client.
for me to get to the knowledge or some, better job.
Exactly. We miss that natural curiosity, that natural, just like, what do we want to learn? What is interesting for us? And I would suggest take some time, even if it's 10 minutes, if you're out in nature, you walk, whatever, just start to remember, what are you curious to learn about? What are you curious to know more about? It could be about, who cares, artwork. It could be about, um, how to keep grass green and gardening. It could be anything. It doesn't matter. Maybe like ancient history. And then take one step to further your knowledge there. Sign up for an online course. One of the things that I think, especially after COVID, is the best thing that you can do. I was curious, a friend of mine said he's going to open a food truck. And I was like, wow, I know nothing about restaurants. I know nothing about food trucks. Tell me all about it. How do you prep so much food so fast? How do you know when people are coming? How do you order the ingredients? How much do you have to pay, to be there? There's no reason I'm not going to open a food truck, right? But just expanding, exploring that curiosity muscle. Whenever you're with someone or you're curious about something, go out, talk to someone who's passionate about it, learn, discover, because you never know. Once you collect this information, you become much more creative, because maybe someone's talking now about research and development in pharmacy, and I'm going, but there was something that the food truck people do that you might want to consider. Nobody who's a specialist in R&D is ever going to know anything about food trucks, right? So creativity, interesting stuff just comes from following these natural curiosities. Your life will become more interesting as you're just discovering more about the world. It's just kind of cool.
Absolutely, and I will connect curiosity and the kids. Why curiosity is so important? I give you my own example. When I started to work with athletes, a lot of sport coaches were saying, "Jan, we recognize you as a great leader in business. You have no clue about the sport." First of all, I was professional tennis player, but that's something
But
we can.
that's no clue.
But anyway, your brain works the same way in the business as much as in the sport. Today, in my country, I have a best basketball player, best football player, best handball player, best table tennis player, and best tennis player, right? And a lot of other athletes, right? So nobody is questioning anymore that it works. And now why? Because I'm super curious. I'm able, even like I'm 61 years old, and it's not like saying everybody can do it. And it's not like, hey, I'm like, miracle man or whatever. No, I'm just ordinary, guy. I'm smart, that's for sure. Otherwise, I would not survive 22 years in the company, right? But not super smart. Let's put it in this way. But I'm curious, so I'm learning new things, and my brain is able to connect, to create new, neuroplasticity, new synapses, and connect different, fields. Now, connecting it to the kids, because kids are super curious, and they are, all kids are growth mindset. They like to play with some toys. There are some other toys they are not giving a shit, okay, but those toys they are playing with, they learn fast. They are curious. That's why 50% of the all synapses are created in the first 3 years of your life, right? Because they are really learning so fast. Curiosity is key. Unless you are curious, forget that you will be creative. Curiosity is necessary for creativity, because curiosity is about asking new questions, connecting things which were not connected yet in your brain in that way. Okay, for example, I know that the way business brains are working is the same way as the sport brains are working. It's only short time. Maybe in the business it's longer time, but other than that, fine. I know, because I went through the deep depression. My athletes are, if they are losing, they don't have a deep depression, but they have a small depression.
Yes.
Absolutely, for 1 hour or 2 hours they are absolutely down, right? And I need to help them. I know you need what to do. And again, it's about the growth mindset, because if you are losing, Yeri, look, I give you one example. Yeri lost in the final, and even though he was like, he could easily win first set and the second set, there were even two set balls, okay? So he lost to Nakashima, and it was very equal, match. So obviously he was not happy. But then in the in the players room, basically his parents were coming. I was there, his coach, his manager, and so on. And we created, that was a small celebration. We said, hey, it's still a huge success, let's move on, we will sit together, whatever. And we created best of that experience of the lose, you know what I mean, right? And he
Yeah.
was still finalist. It was the biggest achievement since like 8 years ago for the men's tennis in my country, right? And this is it. But I mean, they need to accept, hey, it happened, let's move on, right? But this is it. And how, if you can connect, because there's a lot of people telling me like, yeah, if I will move to the new job, it's absolutely new field, I cannot use it. I tell you what, it is about 10 to 15% about the technical skills or whatever what you need for your job, but the rest is about emotional intelligence, how you can manage yourself, and how you can manage your relationship with the other people. Whatever you will do in your life, this is it.
100%. So I have a
Oh,
lot
we're
of,
in the flow now.
but I like yes, please, hallelujah. It's so true. There are so many, folks, leaders who are over the last few years have through COVID for whatever reason they've decided they're leaving their companies. They ask me, okay, so I need some coaching. I want to start my own business, but I don't know how to do it. And I'm like, and they go, I'm not a leader in this field. And the very first piece of advice I give every person is then start to become a leader in this field. Go out, write 3 LinkedIn posts. Okay.
Exactly.
Write 5 articles. And they say, oh, I'm not a writer. I say, well, number 1, go learn how to write. Number 2, in the act of writing, you start to understand the information a little bit deeper because you have to process it. You have to make sense of it. That's actually your learning. Now you're going to go build your credibility out there. Nobody believes like you had, Jan. Nobody knows or trusts yet or believes that you're the expert there. So you need to show them why you're the expert, right? And I always say, go out, write 3 LinkedIn posts, write 5 articles, come out, post that out, and then we can talk. Do you know the percent of people who write even 1 post or 1 article? Maybe 5%. And then they go back to, oh, but I don't know how to run a business. Oh, I can't move because I'm not an expert in that field. You need to move forward. You need to build credibility. You need to follow some curiosity, right? I didn't say write this article, write about this, write about here. The next question is, what do you want to learn about this field? What drew you to this field in the first place? Starting from there, finding that innate passion and just start telling the world, look, this is what I know. As long as you know a little bit more than someone else, you're more of an expert, right? And it builds over time. But people get stuck in the first step. I don't know how. Just do it. Just do something. Just do anything. Just go where you're curious. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be right. You don't need 100% plan. Just go forward. And this is what people with growth mindset understand. They find it fun. They're curious to learn. They find it fun to try something new. And when it doesn't work out, they repeat the cycle. Great. So I'm curious, what about that didn't work? What could be fun about, fixing that, getting it right, like moving forward, making progress? This is the adrenaline high of a growth mindset person. Like, I mastered this thing that I couldn't do before. And you start to build the momentum there, the trust in yourself. Even if I don't know how to do it yet, I can learn it. And there's a book that I want to recommend for people who are going, I really want to learn how to learn new skills, new things very fast. And you will not be surprised by the title. It's called Ultra Learning. It's
Mm-hmm.
by, I think, Scott Young.
I
And
think so. Yeah.
yeah. And he talks about, here are the steps, here are the principles, let's say. It's not exact. Here are the principles. If you want to really learn something new, here's how you can do it. So for anyone who's struggling, saying, I want to, but I don't know how, I don't have time, I'm not sure how I would, Ultra Learning gives you sort of the steps to say, here's how you can do it quite quickly, quite efficiently, and a lot of it is following your natural curiosity so that it doesn't feel hard, long, boring, right? Like going to school. But instead, it's like, oh, cool, I want to come home at night and I want to read that one chapter because it's something I'm naturally interested in. Developing that curiosity muscle, developing that ability of learning how to learn, that's really where you're going to see the biggest impact on your growth mindset.
We have some comments or maybe questions from Edward Barsa. Growth mindset indicates that everybody can be better and better. True, but I see a lot of people, they are very limited. When do you say, listen, forget it? And how do you say it? Sometimes or often you have to throw in the towel as a trainer or coach, but who is so honest? I'm not. Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm that honest. I'm from New York.
Okay.
I think what you're saying is, and this is a very important part for life in general, you
Right.
can't be tied to specific outcomes. So if you are a leader and you need
I
someone
agree.
on your team who can like run Excel spreadsheets, I'll just take a very simple example, and you've taught the person how to run Excel spreadsheets, you've sent them to training classes, and there's some they just can't seem to get this skill set. When do you give up? I think is what you're asking, Edward. Like, when do I just say, like, it's not, hey, growth mindset means they can learn everything and be perfect at everything, right? When do you accept this is not going to be a natural talent for somebody? If it's an absolute minimum requirement for a job and you need it and they can't do it, you don't accept it. You just hire someone new, right? Like, nobody would be like, oh, Lisa, you seem like a nice lady. We'll now make you a medical doctor. No, I should be qualified for that, right? But remember that growth mindset does not mean everybody can be good at everything. There's talent involved, there's natural abilities and skill sets. I will never be great at physics. Never. So the question is, when do you give up? It's not really about giving up. This is Jan's area. It's about following your strengths, right?
Exactly.
So from there, I'll hand it over to you,
Yeah.
Jan.
Yeah. Because, yesterday we launched, our new book, Creation of the Successful Teams, which I wrote together with the former captain of the Czech basketball team, Pavel Pumpala. They were six in China at the World Championship a couple of years ago, right? And the one thing which I'm saying in that book is that the best teams are created through self-awareness of the leader, because you need to be aware who you are. That's number one. Because unless you understand who you are, you cannot understand your people, right? If you understand who you are, you can go and figure out what are the best, talents of your people. Each and every, we have a different genes, different talents. Then you can put, people together. So my talents are covering Lisa's weaknesses and the other way around. Okay. That's synergy in the team. But it's not, it's necessary, but not sufficient. Let's be mathematical a little bit. And the other thing is inspiration. As a leader, you need to have a vision for the organization. And if the people will start to believe in what you believe, then they will, follow you. And if they will be able to use their talents on the way, this is exactly growth mindset. Okay. You don't need to look at them. I mean, in this book, just a second, in this book, it's a manager, my dear friend, Jim Clifton, who is the chairman of Gallup. He wrote about the fact that it's all based on the facts, that book. It's about the modern management and leadership. He's saying that 70% of the success, whatever is the organization, is in the hands of the managers, because it's a manager's responsibility, to figure out what is best in the people and help them to grow. And to me, the growth mindset, where it's for the individual, because I think Carol Kaufman in her book Mindset, she talks more about individuals, and that's absolutely fine, right? But I think the same applies for the organizations, and the leaders are those who can create environment around growth mindset. Because if you think about, everybody talks about, we want to be learning organization, okay, and they're like throwing all courses to the people. That's fine, that's okay, but it's, again, it's necessary, not sufficient. Because if you wanted to create learning organization, it's about admitting your own mistakes, what happened in the past. And unfortunately, some people are like in denial, right? And if you as a leader are not able to admit your own mistake, forget that your people will be very open with their mistakes. I think vulnerability is a great thing for the leader, and to be vulnerable, it's not weakness, it's a strength, right? Because but if you are a child, like, hey, especially if you are a boy, like, oh, you are a big boy, you're like 3 years old, and your parents are saying, you are a big boy, you should not cry. What a bullshit. And if your knee is like burning, whatever, you cry, right? This is it. I mean, you should show your emotions, right? And that's why we are like, they are suppressed, this vulnerability is suppressed. And it's absolutely fine to show, hey, this is it. I made, some, and then you create that environment that everybody will, come and say, this is what we've done well. This is what we need to do better. And you move really, fast, because we are learning mostly from our own mistakes. And it does not matter whether this is individual or organization. This is it. I tell you what, I mean, there are a lot of things Microsoft did well, a lot of things we didn't do, well, right? As in all organizations. But what we did really very well, after each and every bigger project, there was a post-mortem meeting, which means what we will continue to do, what we should stop, and what we should start, more or less, like those things to reflect on what happened, to accept what happened.
Yep. I mean, it's exactly right. And I try to help teams think through, we don't need to be right. We need to focus on getting it right. So we focus on constantly iterating the process until it gets to the result that we want. We're not just focused on saying, well, the result isn't what the result is, right? And I was working with a team last week, and we were actually talking about how are we judging success. And one of the leaders brought up a very, very important point to the CEO, where she said, I don't want to be judged where you come in and you look at the first time that we try something, because the first time we don't know exactly what's going to go wrong. They were running through a few processes. We don't know what's going to go wrong, but we experiment, we see where we need to work, and we'd love for you to start looking and judging from take 2 and on. But not step 1, because step 1 is not I get it right, I'm right the first time. What's important is, can we learn enough to figure out how to move it forward to get it right over time?
Yeah.
And I want everybody to keep that in mind. You don't have to be right the first time. You do the experiment, and you learn and you learn and you learn and you learn until at the end, my God, everybody goes, wow, you knocked it out of the park. It's so amazing. How'd you get there? Well, because I had a million small things that didn't work right the first time. But that's how you learn. It's the only way it's going to work in the future. The people who are really in this fixed mindset, I have to be right, you're going to burn out.
Yeah.
It just is. It won't work in the modern world.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. And you mentioned the other thing, which I think it's important, and that's a mental health of humans, right? Because we are now under the huge pressure, and if the organization is with the fixed mindset, and there is sometimes even like toxic environment, it has very bad influence on your health, not only physical health but also mental health, because your brain works like the huge chemical factory, right? If the things if it's the organization with the growth mindset, it's learning organization using your skills, it's a good team, a lot of endorphin, dopamine, serotonin is released, and you are in a good shape mentally, but it has also good influence on your immunity.
Yeah.
The other way around, it's about cortisol, right? So if it's, they are not using your, strengths, you are still under the pressure. Hey, if you will not beat the budget, you will be fired. Very often it goes like that, right? And then there's a toxic environment. It's about cortisol, and cortisol, short run is fine, but long run, if the stress is chronic, 95% of all illnesses today are caused by the stress. That's what the doctors are saying.
Jan, as you're talking and as we're wrapping up today's session, I'm thinking you've already just said what our next topic for the next session should be about, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever, health.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And maybe even just dealing with some of these toxic modern work environments. I mean, who's been watching what's happening at Twitter, right? You watch, thousands of layoffs at Meta. You watch chaos happening at Twitter. Yeah. And all of a sudden you can't help but feel, right? And what's it like in these toxic environments, and how do we survive? But just in any environment, how do we take care of ourselves? Make sure we don't have burnout. Sounds like a wonderful topic. I'm glad that we had 2 sessions to talk about growth mindset. We could talk for 20 hours, right? But for anyone, go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Lady
I
first.
just was going to thank you. I was just going to say, if anyone has any other questions, of course, keep sharing them with us. We can always address them in the next session or write a response in the LinkedIn chat or in YouTube. But this is an ongoing topic that if you can cultivate, I would say this is one to work on, because you will be so much happier in your work life, your personal life. This will really change how much you can enjoy your life.
Absolutely. And I will end by saying that the way to the success, it's not about elevator, it's about the stairs, right? You
Love
go
it.
step by step. Sometimes, you do more steps, sometimes, less, but you progress all the time.
I
Okay,
love
guys,
it.
thanks very much and
Thanks,
see you
everyone.
again.
See you
Bye bye. Thank you.
soon.